Hello and welcome to the Squeaky Wheel podcast. We speak with leading influencers about policy, industry and more across cycling, walking and all other forms of micromobility. My name is Phil Latz and I've been squeaking about various activities for over 40 years.
And I'm Irene McAleese, co-founder of the cycling technology and data company C-Sense. And we're on a mission to help cities transform for more cycling and micromobility using data. Now today, we are excited to be speaking with Jill Warren. Jill has been the CEO of the European Cyclists Federation since early 2020, and over the years, Jill has become recognised as probably one of the most prominent figures in the European and global cycling advocacy world, speaking on stages from Velo City to the COP climate conferences. So we're speaking with Jill just after she's announced she's going to step down from her role at the end of July this year. So we thought it was the perfect time to catch Jill and use this opportunity to reflect on her amazing tenure at ECF. Under Jill's leadership, ECF has successfully influenced a range of groundbreaking policy initiatives, frameworks and measures in favour of more and better cycling at the EU, wider Europe and global levels, which we look forward to hearing more about soon. Jill, welcome very much to the Squeaky Wheel podcast.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
Firstly, could you just kick off, and I think for our audience who may not be so familiar with ECF, just give us a really brief overview of what ECF is.
The European Cyclists Federation is a civil society organization whose mission is to promote cycling as a sustainable and healthy form of transport and leisure. We're based in Brussels, and as a federation, we have more than 40 members, more than 70 members across over 40 countries in Europe and a bit beyond. And our member organizations also promote cycling, and many of them are themselves member-based organizations, the largest one being advocacy in Germany, for example, but also we have members like Fietsersbond in the Netherlands, Cycling UK, and a whole host of others. We, in addition to promoting cycling, we centrally coordinate the Eurovelo long-distance cycle route network. We organize an annual flagship conference, Velo City, which is the premier conference for cycling planning and promotion. This year it will be in Gdansk in just a few weeks. And beyond that, you'll see us on European and global stages promoting what we believe in, which is more and better cycling for all.
Great stuff. And I'm sure that the Velo City in Gdansk is going to be an amazing swan song for you this year, Jill.
I hope so, yeah.
Before you joined the ECF, you were the chief marketing officer for a major global law firm. I think I read 1,600 lawyers, so no doubt thousands of other staff as well. So you would have taken a huge pay cut to join the ECF. So what motivated you to do this?
This is true. After 20 years in various law firms, which I very much enjoyed, I was ready to do something that maybe aligned more with my personal passions, and cycling was a huge passion of mine. Every year I went on a long-distance cycling trip. Every vacation I needed to take my bike along with me. I, liked everyday cycling for commuting and just getting around. And it seemed like a perfect role where I could bring some of the skills, whether it was running a large team or, knowing about advocacy, particularly in the way that companies use advocacy to achieve their goals. And, there's a lot more transferable skills than one might think going from a law firm environment to an advocacy NGO. And I was very much up for a different kind of challenge.
Now, people listening to this would think, hang on a minute, this lady's in Europe, but that doesn't sound like a European accent. And you're not even from perhaps a better known part of the USA. So where did you grow up?
I grew up in a suburb of Chicago called Cary, Illinois. and I have been in Europe since 1989. So I've lived in Europe much more of my life than in America. But as you can hear, I'm still very American.
And I believe you're fluent in 4 languages. Is that correct?
I think it's more like 3.5. So I lived in Germany for a long time. I'm married to a Dutchman, so I speak German and Dutch very well. And from living in Brussels for so many years, I've picked up French through osmosis, if not formal training. So yeah, I can surprise people.
Jill, you're just about to step down after the 5 years as CEO. I've pointed out something that stood out to me, I think that's resonated, but I'd love to hear your thoughts about what do you think have been your biggest achievements in the role. And if you don't say them all, I'm going to jump in and add some more, but I'm going to let you go first.
That sounds like a threat, Irene. I don't know if I like the sounds of that.
Sure. Well, we're very fortunate here to look back on a very successful 5 years for cycling advocacy. There is no way I would claim that, I have done it all myself, because things don't work that way. You have to have a strong team behind you. You have to have strong partners that you work with. And I think together, some really important achievements that we can look back on. I think the one that stands out the most is probably the European Declaration on Cycling, which was adopted by the European Commission and the European Council and the European Parliament as an interinstitutional declaration last year. And this was the culmination of years of work, trying to convince the European institutions that it was very important and worthwhile to have a strategic approach to cycling, that it needed that kind of treatment, it needed that kind of prominence, and it needed a framework so that it can be pursued in a more joined up and effective way. So that I would say is really an absolute highlight. And,
Yes.
Now we're still working on trying to hold the Commission accountable and getting it implemented in many different ways, which is very exciting work.
Absolutely a huge step, because, now cycling is recognised as a form of transport for a city and has full recognition of the status of another transport mode as opposed to something on the side. So, as you say, if it can then be looked at strategically and planned for, that's a huge step.
Absolutely. I think that's probably a crowning, kind of a joint achievement to look back on. You can also look at things like we've seen funding for cycling at European and national levels increase in a lot of places, which is very important. We've seen more countries adopt cycling policies and strategies that have that kind of more effective approach to growing cycling. We've seen cycling be introduced into key European legislation like the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive. And you might think, well, what's that and what does it have to do with cycling? Well, if you can get parking for cycling to be mandated in residential or commercial buildings, then you will encourage more people to cycle because you will remove that barrier of where am I going to park my bike? And all kinds of things like that. There's been further development of the Eurovelo cycle route network, which encourages not only cycling tourism, but also that connectivity between places for leisure cycling, for commuting, for local journeys. And that's been exciting to see as well. The European flagship Trans-European Transport Network policy, which previously and still, is seen very much as transport corridors for shipping and road transport and rail, and nobody was really thinking of cycling. And in fact, we had a problem before that sometimes these very big cross-border infrastructure projects would cut off existing cycling paths and things. And we've been able to raise so much awareness about that now planning for active mobility has to be taken into account in these very big projects.
Yes, that's great.
Yeah, if I could also highlight some of the global work that we've done. You mentioned COP26. Now, that was in 2021 in Glasgow, and hosted by the UK. There was a transport declaration. There isn't always a transport declaration associated with these events, so we were happy that there was a transport declaration. But when we read it, we thought, it's all about the electrification of vehicles. where are the other modes of transport?
There was no mention of cycling.
No, and
was there at all?
yeah,
I remember.
And we said you cannot decarbonize transport without significantly more cycling. Hello. And we did a big campaign, big communications blitz on that, and we achieved a last minute insertion into that declaration that recognized the importance of active mobility, public transport, and other modes alongside the electrification of vehicles.
Unbelievable looking back that a COP26 hadn't thought about including cycling, and that you guys actually had to advocate to have that included. And it just seems like a no-brainer, but the work has to be done to get cycling on the agenda.
To constantly remind people that this is part of the solution and an important part of the solution. And it's a quick win. There's so much we can do so quickly with so little money compared to the investments you'd have to make for other things that.
Yeah. I do remember the Cycling UK had that great sort of guerrilla campaign that they did around that time with that sort of projection of a bike up on something in Glasgow. Was it this machine fights climate change?
Yes, this machine fights climate change. Yeah, that was brilliant. Yeah.
That was all part of that sort of momentum, wasn't it, to get involved? Jill, you've also done some good work with collaborating, I think, the ECF collaborating with other organizations through the PATH Coalition.
Yeah, so after COP26, some of the actors got together to say, right, we don't want this to happen again, that they forget all the other modes.
Yeah.
And, particularly the active mobility, walking and cycling, we thought there's just so much more potential here. And we got together with, Walk 21 Foundation, the UNEP, so UN Environment Program, and FIA Foundation as big supporter and funder of the work, to co-create the PATH Coalition, the Partnership for Active Travel and Health. And that's become a really important and powerful vehicle for bringing these topics to a global stage. We've done some really interesting knowledge products. For example, we analyzed all UNFCCC, so United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, 197 countries. Do they have a walking policy and or a cycling policy? Do they have walking and or cycling included in their official climate commitments that all countries have to submit in the COP processes? And of course, we found that there is so much room for improvement. And we also found that countries that do have a walking or cycling policy don't always have walking or cycling in their climate commitments as part of the solutions they sign up to. So we've raised a lot of awareness about that. We've created helpful templates that countries can use to incorporate walking and cycling into their nationally determined contributions, which is the mechanism by which the countries sign up to their climate commitments. And so that's been really rewarding and important work for moving the needle there as well. Yeah. No, I like that. I mean, it's so important because the collaboration makes us all stronger and there's different voices. But I also like PATH because I think, as I read somewhere as well, it's going from talking to doing. So there's actual real practical templates and things that cities can pick up and use and follow to implement. Jill, this podcast is coming out just 4 weeks ahead of the 45th annual VeloCity conference held in Gdansk in Poland. So could you explain for us a little bit more about what are the most important benefits of a VeloCity and why people should attend? So VeloCity, being the premier annual conference for cycling planning and promotion, is a place where advocates and city planners and municipal officials and academics and industry and so many people gather to really talk about the topics that are important to us, how we achieve more and better cycling in cities and more generally. And it's a really exciting conference, about 1,600 people come, and we've got 3.5 days jam-packed with sessions, whether it's practical workshops to inspiring plenary sessions and wonderful keynotes and politicians. It's just a really must-go event for all people in this field, I would say. And the theme this year is solidarity, Gdansk being the birthplace of the solidarity movement. And really looking forward to being there as well. Oh, that's great. I would say, for me, I've always found it a conference where
you can go to and feel kind of energized. It is a little bit of an echo chamber in that everybody there loves cycling and gets it, but you can learn you will come away with new contacts and new ideas. But most importantly, what I find is I feel energized always after going back. Because sometimes it can be quite hard, I think, as an advocate, or maybe as people that are, like myself, working in the, in technology, pitching to people who maybe don't always understand cycling. It's nice to go and connect with other people that kind of get it
True.
sometimes as well. And just feel that there's a bit of a tribe of people that understand each other, and you get renewed and a bit refreshed. And people call each other Velo citizens, don't they? So that's always a nice sense of community.
Velo citizens are fun and wonderful people, and they love to dance too. So
yes. And the bike ride is always good too.
The bike parade,
the bike ride.
yes.
Bike parade, yes. That's always a highlight, I think.
Hey, it was the first time I ever met you in face-to-face, Irene, at Velocity Taiwan.
It was, yes.
I was just thinking that.
It was. And I was actually
that.
just thinking that as well. The bike parade in Taiwan was amazing. I remember that.
Starting right out front of City Hall.
They closed down that highway, this sort of super highway through the city. It was pretty spectacular.
So, Jill, I see that the ECF currently has 34 staff, including 7 interns, according to your website anyway. And looking at your annual report, you're funded through a wide variety of sources. So as CEO, what have been your most successful strategies in growing the organisation and raising the funds needed to strengthen its finances?
I think all NGOs face the challenge of having the resources that they need to be able to do their important work, and finding sources of funding that are very aligned to our goals, from funders who are inspired by our work and want to support it and maybe benefit from it. So we're very fortunate to have the support of the cycling industry through Cycling Industries Europe. The Velo City Conference is a source of funding for us, an important source. We are fortunate this year, so our staffing is a bit higher than it usually is because we've had to take on a few more people for a specific project this year, and that is a project we're doing for the European Commission DG Move in connection with the European Declaration on Cycling to analyze cycling data and to try to come up with the methodology for tracking cycling infrastructure and reporting on it going forward. So very ambitious project that cuts across all 27 of the EU countries. So that would account for several staff members who, you wouldn't have seen on the website this time last year. We are at probably the peak of the cycle in EU-funded projects. So we work on a number of them that do pilots in various cities and try things out and otherwise see what can be done to increase and improve cycling in various places where we work with academics and cities and other consortium partners as well as industry. Eurovelo is also a source of funding for us. So we have various development projects going on there, and we work with partners who help fund that work. Beyond that, we have philanthropic funding from the likes of FIA Foundation that supports our work on the PATH Coalition, or the Novo Nordisk Cities for Better Health program that funds various initiatives that we're involved in. So it's a diversified picture, and it has to be, because it's important to make sure that you're properly diversified in the funding, but it does take a lot of time. I would say I spend quite a lot of my time on that, but it is very important to make sure that we have the funds we need to do our work.
Okay. Many of our listeners are involved in various advocacy organisations of all shapes and sizes. From your experience as the CEO of one of the world's largest and most successful cycling advocacy organisations, if you had to give our listeners 1 or 2 tips for increasing their impact, what would you say?
I think it's focus on your why. And your why is your passion, the reason that you do this, the reason your organization exists. And when you're getting people or organizations to support that, talk less about the mechanics of what you do and talk about why you do it. People want to support your why, not necessarily your what. And I think that's important, of knowing what that is and how to articulate that and bring that passion across.
That's very interesting. So we've talked about ECF funding, but looking at the funding that governments give Europe-wide to various infrastructure projects and anything else, Can you give us a ballpark from when you first started in February 2020 to today? How is the annual funding comparing?
It's very mixed. So at a European level, we've been fortunate to see more EU money going into cycling-related projects and things. So for the current funding period, they have 7-year funding cycles at the EU. I would say it's more than double what it was in the last funding period. So it's about 3.2 billion euros, and that's supplemented by another, let's say 1.2 billion that would be co-funded by national governments in the way that some of these funding packages work. So that's really pleasing to see. We have also seen, so with the pandemic, you had a special recovery and resilience funding bucket from the European Union, and we saw about 1.7 billion of that spent or committed to various cycling projects, so several hundred million in Flanders alone for the building of cycling highways, for example. That's been really, really pleasing to see. That's major funding. At national level, as more right-leaning governments have come in, we've seen some funding get cut. That's a bit distressing to see. On the other hand, we saw countries like Ireland with the coalition government that came in at that time in the summer of 2020 to say, we are going to spend 20% of the national transport budget on walking and cycling, which in that relatively small country amounted to about 360 million euros a year or €1 million a day. So we've had some real bright spots like that. But it remains something we have to push for and to make sure that committed funding doesn't get taken away again when governments change. But I do think a lot of cities at that level have been spending more in recent years as well.
Okay, so some of our listeners in Anglo countries such as the UK, USA, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, they might be thinking, oh, it's easy for you in Europe because the European public and the politicians already embrace cycling culture. Are they right?
Well, it's always a mixed picture, isn't it? So, we have places that have absolutely 100% embraced the cycling culture. The Netherlands, for example, the Flanders, most parts of Denmark, but at the same time, we experience bikelash here as well. We still have to fight for everything that we get and that we want. It isn't just magically raining down the way we would like it to. So I think it's a challenge and it's a struggle everywhere.
Mm.
So, Jill, you, as we said at the start, you recently announced that you are stepping down from the role. Are you able to share any of your future plans with us, or is that still under wraps?
Sure, I'm very happy to. The absolute first priority is a sabbatical that involves a lot of long-distance cycling trips.
Yay!
So, that is absolute first priority. In my personal life, I have recently moved to the Netherlands from Brussels.
Oh.
So that is part of the reasoning that's driving my decision to say, okay, after over 5 years at ECF, I think it's time for somebody else to come in and take it forward.
Yeah.
But so I'm enjoying having recently moved to the Netherlands and looking forward. I'm already planning several cycling trips for the coming months, and then we'll see what happens after that.
Oh, that's amazing. Because I know that you are quite a fan of the Eurovelo routes, and I know previous discussions that you had done quite a lot of those, as you said earlier as well, before you even joined ECF. Can you give us a tip, favourite or best ride that you can recommend on the Eurovelo?
Yeah, I get asked.
I haven't done it yet, actually. So this is I'm asking for myself.
I do get asked that a lot. And I have to say, I'm probably not supposed to have a favorite one, but I do. My favorite one is the Danube. And the parts of the Danube in southern Germany, Austria, going into sort of Bratislava there. I just think it's so well developed. The amenities, the towns along the way, and the nice food and wine is just wonderful. And I think one of the best parts about that one is it's really suitable for all ages and abilities. There's no big hills.
Yeah.
It's, quite doable even for families with kids or people who think, I'm not the person in Lycra that, I'm not sure if I can do that. Yeah, I think just about everybody can do that.
Lots of little stops with nice vino and things along the way.
And the Rhine route the river routes generally are really very good and well developed.
Yeah, I'm thinking that.
And so I think the Rhine route is also a really good one.
That's on the list. Thank you.
So we're coming to the end of our conversation, unfortunately. I think times fly when you're having fun. Is there anything we've missed that you'd particularly like to add?
Yeah, I would just like to say, I think there's so much more potential for cycling. There's still so much more to do. Nobody in cycling advocacy should rest on their laurels. We have to keep on pushing for the better world that we want to see, and we need to mobilize all the resources and people that we can to do that.
Well, Jill Warren, thanks for the huge contribution that you've made, and thanks for squeaking.
Thank you, Jill.
Thank you so much.
Irene, what did you make of Jill's comments today?
Oh, that was great. Yeah, I really enjoyed that. I mean, she's such an inspiring person. And I think there was some really great advice. I liked your question to her about the tips for the advocates. And I think that just sums up Jill, that she is such a good communicator, and how she came back and said, find your why and talk about that. And I think that's actually what she is really good at. And that's what's differentiated her. She's great, and she's made a big impact in her time. So I'm sorry that we're going to lose her in that role, but she's going on to ride her bike.
Yeah. Well, you might define her as the quintessential quiet achiever. So it was great that we got the opportunity to speak with her. So now we'll move on to the final section of our podcast each month, which is What's Up, where we just talk about what we might be doing or something we've read or come across. So what's up, Irene?
So for me, yes, down in Sydney next week for the Australian ITS conference, I'm going to be talking about connected cycling data, how we need it to fill all the data gaps and make sure that cities can design safer and better experiences for cyclists. And I'll be touching on some of the work we've done down in Melbourne and elsewhere. But I've been reflecting a little bit on an article that I came across, which is actually some research from Meredith Glasser and another of her colleagues. But I thought it was interesting because they were talking about the Netherlands and some research that was done there, which said that just building bike lanes wasn't enough. Just building infrastructure alone isn't enough. And I thought that was interesting because sometimes you hear people say, build the bike lanes and people will come. And what they're saying now from this quite extensive bit of study is you can build those lanes, but you still may be excluding a lot of people. And they're talking about this sort of transport justice concept. And this is really about, well, what is good cycling, and really the importance of having diverse voices, making sure people can access bikes, and afford bikes. And there's a whole range of different things that go around infrastructure. And of course, something close to my heart is having good data as well that's representative and helps those discussions come to the fore. So I thought that was really interesting to see that research coming out of Amsterdam. And I think comes on the back of some stuff happening in the UK at the moment, where Cycling UK have been highlighting that in some of their research, up to 90% of women are saying that they are feeling fearful when cycling in cities. So they're saying, yes, we do need the infrastructure, but we need cultural change and a whole lot of other things around that. So it's a complicated thing, but I'm really pleased to see this research coming out and highlighting it.
Well, we'll put the links to both of those things you mentioned in the show notes.
Okay.
I've got two things for my What's Up. Firstly, the city of Adelaide. It's for people who are listening who are not from Australia, it's the fifth largest city in Australia, home to 1.4 million people. It's the capital of South Australia, on the south coast, like in the middle at the bottom of Australia, if you like. And it's also the town where I grew up. So I keep a bit of an eye on what's happening in Adelaide. And the City of Adelaide Council, which only covers the central part, has just released an integrated transport strategy. We'll link to that in the show notes as well. So it's published now. It's open for community engagement, which closes on the 25th of May, if anyone's interested. And it's a beautiful document. It says all the right things. It's got quotes from Jan Gehl, the godfather of progressive urban design. It uses Lucy Saunders' Healthy Streets approach. If I had $1 for every wonderful local state and government planning document I've ever seen, I'd be a really rich man. The problem is that when the local paper or a business person says boo, the politicians duck for cover and abandon their planning documents. The City of Adelaide's been particularly backward even by Australian standards. As recently as 2020, it had a drivers month, encouraging people to drive to the city. Can you believe it, Irene? I can see from your expression that you can't.
Yeah.
But in 2021, after years of planning, the City of Adelaide gave back a $3 million state government grant to build the first east-west protected bike lane across the city, following threats by property owners along the route. I think there was one lawyer in particular.
They gave back the grant.
They gave back the money. They forfeited that money and they didn't build it. And 4.5 years on, it's still not built. But in late 2022, a new mayor was elected, Jane Lomax-Smith, who's quite a decorated international medical researcher, very accomplished lady, and she's quite pragmatic. She's said outright she's not a cyclist. She doesn't particularly like cycling, but she understands problems and solutions. And so we'll see what happens under this new mayor, this new strategy, the implementation. That will be the acid test.
Yeah. Wow. That reminds me a bit of the gear change report, which came out under Boris Johnson in the UK. It's a beautifully written document as well. I mean, it's got everything in it that you would want, really. And then it talks about the aspiration to double the number, for 50%, I think, of all short journeys to be done by walking and cycling by 2030 or something. It's a good ambition, but it hasn't been backed up with the funding, I think it's fair to say, over the years to really enable it to come to life. And actually the UK travel survey came out last month, and I think bike trips fell in 2024. They're back down to sort of lower than pre-COVID levels. So it's going the wrong way.
Oh, dear.
So they need to have the investment to follow through on. It's not enough to put out these great strategy documents, is it? You must follow through with the funding.
You need the strategy documents. They're part of the step. But the proof of the pudding's in the eating. It's got to be the implementation. So the final thing I'll talk about, which is a bit left field, but it's actually autonomous vehicles. Many of our listeners might know about Gartner's hype cycle. First, a new technology is developed, then it surges to a peak of inflated expectations about how great this thing is going to be. And then that plunges into the trough of disillusionment when it works out, hey, this is a lot harder and this is going to take a lot longer than we think. And then it gradually climbs the slope of enlightenment before it finally reaches the plateau of productivity. Such alliterative names. We'll put a link to that diagram in the show notes. But in the case of autonomous vehicles, that trough of disillusionment, I think, would be at least a decade or two long. It's been hyped for a long time, but it's been a lot harder than people thought. But I think we're well up the slope of enlightenment now in terms of adoption. Now, I'm not making a judgment that this is good or bad. I'm not advocating for or against autonomous vehicles. The important point I want to make is I think the impacts will be huge. And I think we need to be asking now, what will their impact be for active transport, livable cities, cycling, walking, all of the things that are important to us. And so why am I saying this right now, Irene? Because I just read recently a report on Waypoint, which is the official Waymo blog. And I'll link to that report as well. And Waymo have taxis, autonomous robo-taxis operating in a growing number of cities in America. And they have grown from 100,000 paying rides per week to 250,000 rides per week from October 2024 to April 2025. So it's grown 150% in 6 months, and that works out to 25 rides a minute if it was spread evenly over the 24/7 through the week. And they're rolling out new cities very quickly. So the number could be well over 500,000 by the end of the year rides per week. So it's growing exponentially right now. And they've just published an academic paper on their safety record. And this is interesting because they're getting so many rides now. This safety paper is based on 95 million kilometres of public road driving in the cities that they're operating. So it's a decent, statistically valid database of driving. And what they're reporting is 92% fewer crashes that cause injuries to pedestrians and 82% fewer crashes that cause injuries to cyclists for the autonomous vehicles versus the control being historical fact with all the human-driven cars. So that's a stark drop in accidents. And I'm just dropping this on you unannounced, Irene, because I think it's a topic we might look at in a future episode. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it would be very interesting. I've listened to a few discussions that Carlton Reid has had on this subject as well. But yeah, I think it's interesting. I mean, I maybe read into it a bit more, and I don't know the details of the Waymo piece, but I know that even 5 years ago, I think people were very, very excited about autonomous vehicles. And then you have the levels, don't you? So you have level 1 to 5.
That's correct.
And I think that realistically, I think it's going to be very difficult to get to level 5, I think is what most are saying now, where they're fully autonomous, but level 3 and 4 are quite more achievable.
Yeah, level 4 is no driver, but restricted, geo-fenced as to where they can go. And level 5 is no driver and anywhere, anytime.
I think the level 5 is quite difficult, especially in urban settings. You've got lots of cyclists. So, you can't just have a fully autonomous vehicle operating in a city in a very complex environment.
Well, the Waymo data suggests that you can, and there's videos that they've got on their website showing remarkable near misses where scooter riders of their own volition fall over or swerve in front of the vehicle, or riders come in the dark at right angles at high speed in front of the car, and it manages to stop or swerve.
With all due respect, that's Waymo's research, and I think that there may be other voices that might have different perspectives to that.
Absolutely. We need to have a healthy skepticism.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to sort of talk to some other experts in the area, but my understanding is it'd be very difficult to do in a complex urban environment to have level 5. But let's explore it further. I mean, we've actually worked with some engineering consultancies who do actually do that. They will come in and see how ready a city is for autonomous vehicles, and they have to look at lots of different data and what data can actually be fed into the decision-making capabilities of the driver. Now, C-Sense data in this sense is actually useful because we know where cyclists are braking and swerving and what the road surface condition is like. So that can actually be a piece of useful data for an autonomous vehicle to know that they're entering an area where they could predict more hazards.
Very complex area, and clearly something that is unfolding as we speak, and we need to research more. But I think that'll be a wrap, Irene. Thanks for listening through to the end of this podcast. If you've liked what you've heard, please subscribe via your favourite podcast platform. We're planning to release one new episode per month on the third Thursday of each month.
Give us a review, share the love, help spread the word about the Squeaky Wheel. We're a new podcast, so we really appreciate your help with that as well. If you're enjoying it, let others know.
Until next month, keep squeaking.